Thanks for coming, everybody. I feel so comfortable up here talking to all of you. Today, Jill, Blair, and I will be discussing success coaching and advising, and the advising redesign that we're doing, and we're going to be talking to you a little bit about Inside Track, which is a company that we'll be using to help build some of our success coaching out. So to get started, we're going to introduce ourselves. So my name's Kari Schimmel. I'm the Dean of Arts and Behavioral Sciences here at ICC. And I am chairing, currently I am co-chairless, but I am chairing the completion team, so the group that's responsible for the redesign of the advising process here at ICC. If you were at the meeting this morning, you heard my plea that I would love to have a co-chair who might be interested in doing some of this work with me. So if you know of anybody, or if you yourself might be interested, please do let me know. You're required to sit in the middle tables here. Right here, Bruce, that's for you. And that's on the recording, so now you have to do it. Jill, do you want to use the microphone?
But doesn't that have to go through the faculty forum because it's a committee?
It does.
So
yes.
Yes, if you're a faculty member who wants to join the team, you have to apply through the faculty senate, and please do that because we would love to have all of our teams full. I'm Jill Blair. I am the Title III Project Director. I started at ICC just at the end of March. So I report to Laura Friesenberg if you're trying to figure out where I fit in the organization. I'm part of the institutional effectiveness team. You might recall we got a pretty large federal grant from the Department of Education at the beginning of 2018. And so I was who they hired to help manage that grant and help give some support to the strategic planning projects and other initiatives that are going on at the college that will be supported with that Title III grant. And so this is one of them.
Great segue, Jill, because that's one of the first things that we're going to be talking about. Just a little bit of background on Inside Track and on success coaching. So as you're probably aware, the college does have success coaches in place already. We actually implemented these, oh gosh, it's probably been a year and a half or 2 years ago that we started using success coaches because success coaching has been identified as a high impact practice, right? It's something that other community colleges are doing as another support service for students to help them to persist and complete. Dr. Quirk-Bailey spoke about this morning when she did that graph of the 100 people, and here's how many will actually, here's our advancement rate and completion rate. So one of the things that we'd like to do is increase our completion rates, and success coaching has been identified as a strategy to help students to persist and complete. It's a wraparound service. It's something that's offered in addition to the things that are already happening. But there are many schools that are integrating advising and success coaching together or looking at them as very similar or interrelated practices, and that's basically the approach that we're taking as well. So Jill mentioned the Title III grant, which is, awesome. Dr. Quirk-Bailey loves to talk about it too because it's other people's money, which we love. It's like winning the lottery. We get other people's money to do stuff with, and that's what happened with the Title III grant. Obviously, we had a team that worked very hard on securing the Title III grant. But part of the grant, and this is a really critical piece of why we're using Inside Track, part of that Title III grant requires us to replicate a study, a Department of Education approved study of a student success initiative. So we have chosen, because this was again tied to the grant dollars, we have chosen to replicate the Bettinger and Baker study, the effects of student coaching in college and evaluation of a randomized experiment in student mentoring. And this is an article that was, I think, sort of attached to the grant, or at least it's often distributed with the verbiage of the grant. So I read it in one of my grad classes before we started talking about it here, and then I was like, wait, I know those two names, Bettinger and Baker. I read that study. So that's what we're going to be doing. So to receive the grant and to get the dollars, we have to replicate a DOE study. That's why we're replicating Bettinger and Baker, and that is really why we're using Inside Track. Now, there are other reasons that we're using Inside Track, because they seem to be a really great company that's going to help us with capacity building and other things, which we'll talk about a little bit later. But first and foremost, we have to replicate the study, and the study was done on Inside Track. So the study used Inside Track and their success coaching model, and basically used two different groups, a group, sort of a control group, a group of students who did receive success coaching, and a group of students who didn't. And the results were obviously that the students who received the success coaching had better outcomes. So that's what we're going to be doing here. It is a randomized sampling of students. They didn't just do them in one college. It was different colleges and universities that they sort of brought together. And the outcome was that coaching did affect persistence and completion positively. So what we're going to try to do is replicate that study by showing that student success coaching can lead to positive outcomes for students, particularly when it comes to persistence and completion. And as you see in the study, the retention rates were better, so we're hoping that our retention rates will be better with us using Inside Track as well. Okay, so Jill is going to talk about who Inside Track is.
So when I first started at the end of March and in the month of April, Dr. Friesenberg kind of brought me up to speed, gave me the grant, gave me the study, and said, all right, have at it. So I said, well, I wasn't part of the team that wrote this grant. I don't know what any of this is. Let me Google Inside Track first of all and check out what they're all about, and then eventually call them to get a demo. And so this is a little bit about what we learned about Inside Track in their own words. So who do they say that they are? There's no way I'm reading the writing on the screen here, so I'm glad I brought my own copy. So they talk a lot about unlocking human potential. You'll see some of the words that are bolded there. Passionate about student success, dedicated to partnering with colleges and universities to create adaptive student success solutions that generate measurable results, which is really important to me as a grant administrator, that we have to be able to show what we're accomplishing. That they've coached over 2 million students and supported 4,000 plus programs, improving student retention, completion, satisfaction, and career readiness. So what they're saying is, hey, we're pretty good, and we do it a lot. We've got a lot of experience here. And then I saw these words like integrity, optimism, and dedication, and those speak to me as an educator. I'm guessing that's a lot of why you're here as well. You know, we believe in open and transparent integrity. I can't even read. Above all, the optimism and human potential, and then dedication to sustainable impact. And then they have this, what I think is a pretty lofty goal, to unlock potential in 100 million people. Which that to me, when I read that one, I went, all right, I don't know about this. I'm a little skeptical of these people, 100 million people. Are you serious with this? So I thought, well, we probably need to check them out, get a demo, see what I can find out and put it into our own words. So what we learned, Inside Track is a nonprofit, which to me is a plus in their column. They're in this because they do care about students. It's not about making a buck. They've been around since 2001, so this isn't something new. Again, over 2 million students that they've coached nationwide. Research-informed student support methodology, which that's important to us as educators as well, right? We don't want to just make stuff up. We want to make sure that what we're doing is research-based, data-informed. And then what I also found out is this aligns really well with our strategic planning goals, and not only with the Title III requirement that we replicate the study, but also with the objectives that we have for our Title III grant, which we're going to talk about a little later. I found that they have a positive impact on student persistence, and as much as 10 plus percentage points pretty quickly, within a year or two, improving persistence rates by 10 or more percentage points, which is what we need to do if we're going to get to that 60% that Dr. Quirk-Bailey is always talking about. And then what I observed in my own interactions with them is that they're very collaborative. They were so patient with me. You know, they did a demo for me, then they did a demo for me and Laura. Then they had a conference call with some cabinet members, with Kari, with other leaders in the organization that might be impacted by this. They did a demo with the completion team. So they've really been working with us. Even though we haven't signed a contract, we haven't given them $1. They've been working with us since I got here to try and figure out what's going to work best for us. And then we learned a little bit about the components of coaching, which I'm sure you cannot see at all on that slide, but we're going to get to it, so don't worry about that too much. Again, more slides that you probably can't read, but a little bit more about their approach to coaching. So when we talk about how we advise students right now, we have an idea of what we want to do, I think how we want to serve students, but what's what usually ends up happening is, I want to drop this class, I want to add that class, I need to register, right? Which is great, that needs to be done. If we don't have students registered for our classes, we're out of business. But what we get into student services for is more about developing who they are as a person, right? So we talk about their knowledge of the institution, their knowledge of college in general, their skills maybe to navigate that. But then we also need to talk about their attitudes and their beliefs. And this is where we might struggle to bridge that divide. So do they believe that college is worthwhile, or are they just here because their parents said so? Do they believe that they are just as capable of success here as any other student? What's their attitude towards sitting in class, towards interacting with professors and classmates? Those are sometimes the keys to whether they're going to persist or whether they're going to complete. It's not whether they're registered for the right classes. Sometimes it is, but there's more to it than that. So they talk about the knowledge, skills, and abilities, or knowledge, skills, attitudes, and beliefs. Sorry. Let me see my stuff up. And then what they really focus on is developing self-sufficiency. So at first you might need to talk through it with your coach. What are the challenges at home? What are the challenges in your environment? Health issues that you might need to worry about. Other things outside of, not just in the school environment, but outside of the school environment. How do we clarify where you want to be when you graduate? How do we connect you to what you need in order to accomplish that? How do we help you organize your commitments so that you're not struggling with time management and other things? Sometimes it's not, we talk a lot about time management. Fill this in your calendar and put your classes there and then plan when you're going to do homework and then plan. What you often find when you do that calendar exercise, not just for students but for ourselves, we're overcommitted. We cannot possibly fit it all in. So the best time management skills in the world isn't going to amount to much if you're not talking about prioritization, putting in the big rocks first. I think everybody's heard that story, right? If you don't put the big rocks in first, they're not going to fit. So talking with students about those kinds of things that maybe, where we are in our lives sounds cliche, but to 18, 19, 20, 22, 24-year-old student, this is new information that we need to help them through. And then through that, they develop the ability to manage some of that on their own and accomplish their long-term goals.
I'm going to go off script a little bit here. Jill, I hope you don't mind.
Yep.
I'm actually going to kick it out to you for a minute because I want to just assess what your perception is of success coaching. So I think one of the things that we often conflate is success coaching and tutoring. So I want your feedback here. I'm going to throw it off to you. Anyone tell me what you think a difference is between tutoring and success coaching. How do you think those two things might look different? Dorothy, you look like you might have an answer.
What the heck? I think tutoring has to do with a certain subject, helping them getting through that subject, or this problem in an assignment, those kind of things. Where success coaching, I see as a bigger thing, where you're trying to help them look at not only what they've committed to, their school and their life, and it's a more holistic thing there where classes are just part of that, but in the end, it's to find that their happy place,
Okay.
you might say.
Good. Dan?
I would say tutoring is content-based, so about a particular subject, whereas
Right.
Success coaching is skill-based.
Okay. So content versus skill?
Yeah,
Right here.
skill, I'm a little leery about just saying that about success coaching, but skills in terms of time management
Right.
and study approaches and those types of things. So
Yeah.
maybe skills beyond just the academic world, whereas the content, working on this
Right.
particular chapter, this particular
Yeah.
learning objective.
One more. Go ahead.
I think that that success coaching has a much more important emotional component to
Sure.
it,
It's more of a socio-emotional type thing rather than
a knowledge and
yeah,
intellectual.
knowledge driven. Okay, good. I like what you're saying, and it sounds like we're all on the right page here in terms of what success coaching really is, which is great. I'm glad that the perceptions are accurate. So yes, it's very much I like that you said holistic, Dorothy, because that's exactly how I see it. Success coaching is a very holistic approach to helping students understand their motivations, their drives, their desires. It's less about, well, why are you struggling with your math homework so much, and more about talking about much larger things that affect a student's knowledge, skills, and abilities, like Jill talked about. And yes, Dan, I think it's helpful to think of it not as content-based, right? It's more of the non-cognitive abilities, right? So we talk about doing non-cognitive assessments, and that's one of the things that the advising team has talked about doing, a non-cognitive assessment. So it's not about, what are your, we know that students are already doing cognitive-based assessments, or at least they have been up to this point. Now that we're moving to multiple measures, we're doing maybe a little less of that. But we know how a student's math skills are, we know how their writing and reading skills are, but we don't necessarily know what their study habits are. We don't know what they're dealing with in their lives beyond just their classes. And we do know that we teach at a community college, and that means that we have a variety of students who are facing a variety of challenges, and many of those things are things that would be very relevant to address in success coaching, but they would not at all be relevant to address in a tutoring session, for example. So it is helpful, I think, to think about it as content-based as well. And yes, to look at it as, as life skills, as looking at it as a sort of socio-emotional learning rather than just particular content. So my team, the advising team, had a meeting with Inside Track, and they did like a meeting. I don't know what you call that. It wasn't a webinar really, but it was like a virtual meeting where we Skyped them in. What do the kids call those? A net meeting? A web meeting? A virtual meeting?
FaceTime.
FaceTime? Sure, we did that with Inside Track. And so we Skyped them in, or whatever the term. I know it's not Skype. What the heck is that tool called that we use?
Zoom.
Zoom. We Zoomed them in. And they really have. I will say that Inside Track has been great about meeting with us 11 billion times. We've asked them 11 billion questions. They've patiently answered our questions. They've talked to different groups of people. But my advising team was really curious about what this would look like. We were having a hard time just conceptualizing, like, okay, so are they going to log in and click on something, and then it's going to put them in some sort of virtual room, and then they're going to chat with somebody? Like, what's this going to look like? So we actually had them do a demo for us, and we were going to show you the demo, but what we've learned is that success coaching isn't particularly sexy to watch, right? Like, it's just not all that appealing. It's really very like, okay, talk to me about, what's going on and what are your big concerns right now. And so you can see the screenshot there, which was, is Tanya her name? Tina. Tina did like a virtual success coaching session for us with one of the other Ken from Inside Track. I should know all their names by now. And so she actually walked us through like what a success coaching session would look like. So the nice thing about it is that it can be done across different platforms. So for some of them it might be making a phone call. For others of them it might be an actual Zoom, FaceTime style meeting like the one that Tina and Ken did for us. And it may be just a text check-in. It really depends upon the student and also where the success coach is at in terms of the relationship building. But the goal of success coaching is to really drill down into that emotional type stuff that Lynn was talking about, right? And to really take a holistic approach to understanding the student, understanding the challenges that they're facing, and really helping them to build their own non-cognitive abilities. So we talk about metacognition a lot, metacognitive skills. It's not just, well, I can do math or I can do my science homework. It's I believe that I have the ability to succeed. I believe that I have the tools and the resources that I need. I am motivated to do this. Here are my reasons for pursuing this. Here's what I hope to get out of this. And so it's a much larger picture than just class or assignment-based stuff. I feel like Dorothy might have a question. What is it?
This maybe if you're going to hit this, just say, hold on.
Okay.
But are the students assign somebody? I mean, if they contact this organization today, they get one counselor or success coach.
Mm-hmm.
Then, tomorrow or Saturday.
Yeah.
Because I'm assuming this is 24/7.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yes, so I will say that I think the answer to that question is yes, they will have the same coach. I mean, I think that that's part of it is that they meet with the same person for, I mean, this is what we want in our advising practice
Right.
too, right? We want the students to meet with the same person over and over again rather than being bounced from one person to the next. I will also say that, and I think I'm talking about that. Am I next also?
Go for
On
it.
the next slide? I think I'm talking about this
Yep.
too. Like what it's actually going to look like in terms of capacity building. I'm gonna go back actually for a second because I'm not quite ready for that. But one of the things that they're going to do, and so my answer to your question is yes, they will work with the same success coach because that is, I think, intrinsic in their model, right? That they don't want the student to meet with Dorothy one day and then Paulette the next day because Paulette's going to have to, I'm going to have to tell my whole story again to Paulette. That's maddening and exhausting for a student. So they will be meeting with the same coach. What it will look like, we don't know yet because part of the work with Inside Track is the first thing that they're going to come in and do, and we've talked about them doing this, is sort of a, I call it an environmental scan or a needs assessment. So what does our current success coaching model look like and how are we actually going to build that and what is it going to look like for us? And that's actually part of the work that we'll do with them, is the capacity building part of it, where we decide what it's going to look like and how the students will access it. And if I'm a student and I want success coaching, where do I go for that? Is it going to be a button on our website? So we're going to work out with them exactly what that will look like in terms of how they access
I was
it.
just thinking, you know, it's a 24/7 thing. The success coaches, you know, they gotta sleep.
I wouldn't say 24/7.
Yeah. I would say, I don't know if I would say 24/7 either. I would say that they're going to have access to reach out to their success coach, but that doesn't mean that their success coach is going to be awake at 2 in the morning and
That's
reply
what I
to their
mean,
text. But I think the point, and this is what they'll say too, because they've mentioned this a couple times, the point is to get the students to the point where they don't feel the need to reach out at 2 in the morning because they're not panicking, right? Because one of the things, this is one of the things Ken Mellendorf talked about on my team, is what do you do with the student who it's Sunday night and they have, you know, a big math something the next day and now they're freaking out and they're going to drop the class. The point is to prevent that from even happening in the first place by doing some work on the front end.
Okay.
Yeah, so, and I think you're right to say I don't necessarily know that it's 24/7. I think it'll be accessible, I just don't know what that's going to look like yet. Go ahead.
I'm sorry for arriving late, maybe you already discussed it, but are they self-identifying?
The students? I don't know. Jill's going to come up here and answer that one. That's too hard for me.
So I want to give a little bit of context. We will be using Inside Track coaches for the study replication. So before you came in, we explained that our Title III grant requires us to replicate an approved study. The one that we settled on is how well Inside Track affects persistence and completion. So we will be using Inside Track remote coaches for that study, which is approved for up to 400 students for up to a full year. We have some ideas about how we're going to select students who will be eligible for coaching, but we have not defined that just yet. The point of Title III is to help students who are part-time, developmentally placed, and/or African American. So when we're thinking about those target groups, what's the best sort of avatar that we can choose to get at that group? So, you know, it could be any number of things. It could be by zip code. It could be by incoming African American part-time students. It could be students who we currently are serving who are struggling. We'll talk that through and figure that out. But long term, the idea is we're not going to be relying on Inside Track to be providing this coaching. We want to internalize that, bring it here, equip folks locally, because they'll be much better at serving our students. Even though Inside Track's pretty impressive from what we've seen so far, you can't replace, you know, one-on-one, face-to-face.
That was my
coaching.
question.
Yeah.
We have success coaches here.
Yes.
What happens to those poor people?
Absolutely.
So nothing's happening
Nothing
now.
right now.
Because this
long-term,
is
we're gonna-
parallel.
Yeah,
Exactly, yeah.
exactly.
So we'll still have students who have a relationship with their existing success coach aren't,
No, they're not.
they're not
required-
abandoned.
No, not at
So
all.
this is an extra bunch of group.
It is, and
body
really,
group. That's
I think
good.
the best way to look at it is that it's capacity building. So, how's our success coaching model doing right now? Does anybody know? Oh, sorry. Jill's probably like
going crazy right
No,
now.
no,
so I'm
no,
not
no,
even
I'm loving
following the
this.
script at all. How is our success coaching program doing? Is it effective? Is it working well?
You just hired one recently, right?
I did.
Yeah, you did.
I did.
I think it
She
probably
starts
is
in 2
very
weeks.
helpful to me, I'm guessing here, but I'm thinking it's probably helpful
Okay.
for the students that take advantage of it.
Right.
It's the students that may not even know it's there.
Right. I think that what you just said, Dorothy, is very important. If you didn't hear that, and for the recording, she said it's very helpful if the students know that it's there, or for the students who know that it's there. I'm not dissing our student success coaching program at all. It's amazing, and the success coaches that we have are rock stars. They're brilliant, and they're wonderful at what they do. But I think they would also tell you that they could use some help, right? They could really use some help in building up that program. And so really our focus on using Inside Track is, I mean, again, gentle friendly reminder, we had to use them because the grant made us use them. But, you know, we reached out to other colleges who have used them, and I'm sure that Jill probably has the feedback and she'd be happy to share it or post it somewhere.
It's
Yeah,
coming up
it's
on the
probably
later
coming up.
slide.
Again, driving Jill crazy here. But the feedback that we've gotten from other colleges has been really, really overwhelmingly positive, that it made a huge difference for them, and that the point of Inside Track is to come in, help what we're doing, and then get out. Like they're not in the long game. They don't want to be Inside Track at ICC forever. They're going to come in and help us build up our capacity, and then they're going to bail once we're ready to go. So yeah, nothing's happening to the current success coaches other than that. They will more than likely be getting an extra layer of support and training from the Inside Track people. And I don't know, because none of them are here, so I can't ask them like what kind of training they did for their current roles. But any sort of professional development and training that we're going to get from Inside Track, I'm sure will be appreciated. So this is what coaching looks like. A coach sits down with a student virtually. For our purposes on our campus, the coach sits down with the student, most likely face-to-face, and the students do, by the way, go to sign in and select that they want to see a success coach. So that's the way our current model is sort of set up. But it's about, again, drilling into those emotional things, having an ongoing relationship with the students where they do check-ins and kind of build their own metacognition skills so that they believe that they have the capacity, the wherewithal, the ability to succeed, to persist, and to complete whatever credential it is that they're trying to complete. So in terms of our advising redesign, you know, our task for the completion team has been to completely redesign the college's advising system. That includes technology integration, which is a piece that we'll be kind of biting off next. But really what we're trying to do with advising, and this is where our advising team has had some discussions about how we see the role of success coaching and advising, whether we see them as two distinct practices or whether we see them as sort of an integrated practice. I think where we've landed, at least at this point in time, and Dan and Lynn, you guys have been at some of those meetings, I think where we've landed is, yes, advising should do some success coaching, but we will still offer standalone success coaching for students who need more, right? So ideally, we'd like advisors to do success coaching in their advising appointments rather than, okay, I have this class number 1283 that fits in your time schedule, because that's easy stuff that the students can be prepared to do on their own. We want to see the advisors do more success coaching style stuff. So ideally, we'd like them to be integrated, but we know that there's still going to be a need for success coaching beyond what an advisor can do in their appointment times, because advisors have a lot of students and not long appointment times. I mean, there's just not enough time for them to do all of these things. So we do see a need for standalone success coaching as well. But it's about empowering the students. It's about being transformational, not transactional. It's not, you know, advising shouldn't be a transaction where I dump information on the student and say, here's your class schedule, now I've registered you, or here's your card, go up to enrollment and give them your card. It should be about much more than that. It should be about relationship building and a real case management style, which is, you know, when you ask the question, Dorothy, that's an important question. Are the students going to be seeing the same person? Case management would tell us that they should see the same person every time, because it is exhausting to students if they have to keep telling their story to 800 different people. And that also allows you to develop a relationship with the students. This is no small undertaking. Okay, Jill's going to talk about, right? You're going to talk about capacity building? I've already sort of talked about it anyway.
Yeah, I think we've kind of covered it, so I can jump up.
Sorry, Jill.
No, you're good. This was actually your slide.
Oh, was it? Oh.
But no,
I think
I think we've done it. I think we've covered this. You know, they're going to walk us through the needs assessment. We're going to identify the people, technology, and processes we need to do what we want to do, what the completion team has been working on. The completion team can't do this alone. Like, it would take decades, and by the time we got to step 3 in the process, everything would have changed again. We'd have to start over. So when we discovered that, we went to Inside Track to say, okay, help us with this success coaching study. And they said, well, we can do that, but we also have this other thing. And that was really well aligned with the work that Kari and her team are doing. So again, process development, training, and support. They will support us as we begin to take on more responsibility for this. Transition the coaching services to the institution, and then quality assurance and the continuous improvement. We all know we have great people in place who are here because they care about students, they care about this community, and they want to make a difference in students' lives and change the world. But there are so many pressures. There's so much going on that we really need to work on. How do we change ourselves? How do we change the expectations we have of ourselves in this institution to, again, put the big rocks in first? If our big rocks are, you know, student success, community success, and all we're doing, or most of what we're doing is registering students for classes, we're not living up to our own expectations. So they're going to help us get there. As Kari mentioned, we talked to Inside Track like 11 billion times to use Kari's terms, and that's probably pretty accurate. I think 6 or 7 different times over the last 3 months. They've provided demos, they've given us white papers, they've answered our questions, and then they also talked about work they've done with other colleges. So we identified 4 Achieving the Dream leader colleges that had worked with Inside Track for capacity building, and this is the kind of feedback we saw. So data, retention was up 4 to 18 percentage points for these 4 colleges. One commented that students were registering 15 days earlier than before coaching was implemented. So again, giving them the habits and the abilities and desire to take care of their own stuff ahead of time, so that we're not 3 days before classes start with everybody having to work on the weekend and scrambling to get people enrolled. Improved morale among the advising staff because they were doing what they came here to do. They felt passionate about what they wanted to do and they were able to do it. And then improved student opinion of advising services as well. And then some of the quotes from people that sent feedback. Inside Track staff were effective project managers and trainers. They were flexible as our needs evolved, and I'm already seeing that in our interactions with them. Inside Track has always surpassed our expectations. Their communication is superb. Inside Track was instrumental in making big organizational and cultural shifts, helped build cohesion around student success. That one is super powerful to me. And then would unreservedly recommend working with them. The results more than pay for the investment. And since we're investing other people's money, that sounds like a win-win-win for me.
So this is a company, and they come in and basically help us get started, and then they fade out.
Correct.
So how do they make their money?
They're nonprofit.
Okay.
Yeah, they're nonprofit. And I mean,
Nonprofit just means what they do with it. They
Yeah.
still have to make a profit.
yeah, I mean, but we're paying them for this agreement. We're going to be working with them for 4 years.
Okay.
We have a $2.7 million Title III grant, and a healthy chunk of that is going towards this because we recognize how important it is, because it aligns with our strategic plan and our strategic goals, because it's where we need to be if we want to serve our students and our community in the way that we need to. So again, getting that Title III grant, the purpose is to really help us to grow practices and technologies that we know we need, but that we wouldn't otherwise be able to implement. So this is really the purpose of the Title III grant. So as I mentioned earlier, Inside Track supports Title III and the strategic planning goals. I don't know if you can read those objectives, but objective number 1 for Title III is to strengthen academic and student support services, including comprehensive case management. There we go. Title II, or Objective 2 of Title III, expand the capacity of institutional technology for data analytics and data-informed decision-making. We didn't talk a lot about this, but we will be trading data back and forth with Inside Track. So we'll know which students are accessing those coaches, how often are they accessing those coaches, what percentage does their retention and completion improve by. So again, helping us make those decisions about what's working and what we need to tweak. And then objective number 3, strengthening professional development to support academic support innovations, technology utilization, and data-informed decision-making. So we are really going to have a comprehensive plan for how we develop our local advisors and coaches so that they can deliver this effectively. And then the graphic kind of speaks for itself. You know, we needed to do the success coaching for the study replication. That's where this started. That success coaching is going to help us with objective number 1, strengthening academic and student support services. And then that capacity building gets us to objective 2, objective 3, as well as the strategic planning initiative to do the advising redesign. So working with them just seems like they came along at just the right time and fit in with so much of what we're already planning to do. So pretty exciting.
And what is capacity building?
Capacity building is this relationship over the next 4 years with Inside Track where they're going to help us build our capacity to deliver student success coaching effectively.
It's like training us up, basically,
Okay.
which is kind of their gig. I mean, you asked Dorothy, like, well, how do they make their money? Like, their gig is to not come in and stay here and set up shop for forever. Their gig is to come in and help an institution train itself up and build its own capacity to deliver these services so they can get out and help somebody else. And one of the things that, sorry, I can't shut up. One of the things that we talked about in our advising meeting, one of the questions that we were asked is what kinds of professional development our advisors are getting right now, what kind of training and professional development they have. And it was a real need that was identified, that our advisors and our success coaches really need good training. They need good professional development, and that's one of the things that Inside Track will be doing is training them up and giving them professional development opportunities so that they can, you know, sharpen their skills and deliver the best possible coaching that we could deliver.
Does their training include information that will help people not get in too deep?
Oh, I'm sure that it does, yeah.
Absolutely. And I mean, the question was, does the training include strategies for helping people not get in too deep? And that's part of building those habits. Because you can come in with the best of intentions and say, I'm going to enroll full-time, I'm going to take 17 credit hours, I'm going to get this done. Your success coach is going to look at you and say, when's the last time you took a math class? Do you have any kids at home? Older parents that you're helping take care of? What's your commute like? Do you have broadband access at home? Are you going to be okay taking some online classes? Are you working full-time? They're going to talk you through that and say, look, I know you're anxious to get there, but what you're doing, you're going to burn out. You know, this is not about selling. This is about helping the students figure out what's going to work best for them. So.
Is that what you were asking? Or were you asking?
No, but
Yeah.
it was another question.
Because the way I was
That's all
answering
good.
was, I think, based on what you were asking, which I think is are they going to train the coaches not to get in too deep?
Yes.
Like
Are they going to train the
somebody who
coaches?
is very emotionally.
Setting boundaries, yes,
Yes.
that's all
Yeah.
part of their process. Appropriate
And-
boundary setting.
Yeah,
and
that was
guiding
part of
students
the
to
one of the
services.
questions we had from someone on the completion team as well, that, you know, if you start building these relationships, these students might open up to you about some really serious issues, you know, mental health or domestic abuse or other things that might be too much for a success coach to handle. So part of the training is, what do I do when that happens? How do I refer this person to the appropriate professional who can really help them with this immediate, maybe dangerous need that they need to get addressed?
And
That's
boundary
my
setting.
concern.
Yeah.
And boundary setting, yeah.
Well, I could just see where somebody could be going through a really rough time and be a little whacked out, and then the coach doesn't make a move that a professional, like somebody who does counseling for a living or something, and they could really end up not making the right move.
Right.
And we've got all sorts of stuff.
Yeah.
So making sure that you get folks connected to the right resources and the appropriate professionals if things are serious.
What other questions do you have? Because we have like 3 minutes left.
What's the timeline on this?
It's a great question.
We have the paperwork sitting on my desk ready to sign. We are working with folks in IT to make sure that we've got the capability to start with the data sharing. We've got the attorney looking over the contract to make sure that we're good to go there, because this is a significant investment. We want to make sure that we have poked at the contract and make sure that we're going to be good. Once we sign that, then we would schedule a meeting probably with the completion team and maybe some cabinet members to talk through what's this going to look like, for the next 4 years. We will start with the remote coaching for the group of 400 students, probably for the spring semester. We're not going to get this in place in October, in time for when students are registering for spring. So it'll probably start after the first of the year, and then continue for a full calendar year after that. So we do have time to talk through that needs assessment, the environmental scanning, figuring out which students are we going to target. How do we make sure that we're getting the right group?
I mean, part of their process is just learning about our campus and what our capacity currently is, so that's why you just said it, Jill, but the environmental scan and the needs assessment to me is like a very critical piece before we even get started. Where are we? What capacity do we have? What's our campus like? And they're going to have to get to know all of that stuff before we actually formulate a solid plan.
So once the contracts and stuff signed, let's say by September 1st.
Correct.
It's not kind of quick, but then the environmental scanning and the training and all of that occurs.
Yeah, the needs assessment would come first.
Yeah.
And then I would think training would probably start next year at this time, would be my best guess. But what I've also learned from working with them so far and from talking with the other colleges, that it really is going to be an iterative process of this is where we want to go, this is our desired state, this is what we currently have, what are our gaps, what do we need to do to get there, and then, okay, maybe we've set our goals too high and we're trying to move too fast. How do we do this at the pace and in the order that's right for our institution? If you were at the all-college address this morning and you saw Karen Ball from COSI talking about ADCAR and change management, one little added bonus is we were talking with ProSci about change management, and we've got so much going on at the institution. How do we address the people side of change? We see that people are burned out, they're frustrated, they're telling us that it's too fast, it's too much. How are we going to help each other through all of these challenges and changes that we need? We're doing that independently. We're looking at Inside Track and Success Coaching independently. And then Inside Track says to us, well, actually, we know that this can be really hard on people who are currently advisors. So we have adopted an approach to change management. Are you familiar with ADCAR? So it's kind of worked out that these things are coming together at the same time, that we really want to do this right. And if we don't build the awareness, the desire, and the knowledge to get this done, it's not going to go anywhere. And so we have a vision.
And the grant allows us to fully think through this process because it's a 4-year grant.
Correct.
It's not like, oh my gosh, we've got to get this done.
Fast forward, yeah, no.
Yeah, so I mean, that's nice.
It is very nice.
You know, that you have the time to let it percolate.
Right. We have 4 years left in the Title III grant, and so that's why we're trying to get that set up now so that the full 4 years can be used to do this thoughtfully, intentionally, with all the right pieces in place, that we're not in a rush because the grant dollars run out at the end of the year. We have to do it now. That'll backfire every time. We're a little over time. Does anybody have any other last questions?